Thordis Elva is a remarkable woman. She has a powerful and difficult story to tell that is helping to solve pain and trauma for people all over the world. In addition, she is profoundly influencing contemporary discussions over gender relations and positions. At 16, she got drunk at a party, was walked home by her then boyfriend and raped. Thordis went through a long period of denial until she summoned the courage to do the least likely thing. She reached out to her rapist, Tom, stranger, 9 years later to talk with him. What emerged is a powerful story about what trauma, pain and repressed grief do to us, and also about how crime writes itself into the life of the guilty. Thordis and Tom spoke at TedEX and their show has millions of views. Together, they've published a book that's sold all over the world. This story also upsets a lot of people around the world who want to hide their fears and anguish behind anger. It exposes questions that our society still cannot answer. Is the partner or boyfriend of any woman the owner of her body and therefore she has no right to deny sex? Do we think it is okay to rape a woman who gets drunk? Do we live under the illusion that the best way to survive the pain of our lives is to hide it to others and to ourselves? Just now starts powerful, friendly and personal conversation that will not blackmail or cheaply outrage you, but it won't leave you in peace. I'm very curious about the discussion.
Thordis, I must say that I admire your courage. I think it's a mission that you are on. And you are traveling how many years around the world with your story?
Well, it first came out in 2017, so 7 years now.
Wow. How many countries?
It's out in 14 countries now, but some of them are publishing it also in other English-speaking areas, so it's actually a bigger part of the world than it sounds like.
You must have very interesting information about the people and about the world. As you are traveling, meeting people, and you made something like an unofficial survey. How do people behave? How do society accept the story? How are people ready to get involved into the topic? Tell me, please.
For sure, yeah. No, I definitely feel like the cultural difference between one place and another, traveling with a story like this, I think it's a barometer of where we stand on so many issues. Many of them relating to women's rights and to feminism, but even more so to like humanity and violence prevention and just fundamental societal values. So I do think that I feel, or I get this unique insight when I travel with a story like this into how countries are treating it differently.
Tell me the differences or some interesting points, because I really wonder, what are the differences? How the societies in different countries can just...
Right. Well, I also see it in the way that media treats it. Some countries have sensationalized my story, made it into, I think, more of a clickbait and more of like, here's this terrible story that happened to this poor woman. While in other countries, it's been more of a politicized debate, like, why do men commit sexual assault? Like, where are we going wrong as a society? How can we change it? With more of a, I think, solution-oriented focus. So that's how I feel I get an insight into how willing a society is to discuss solutions as opposed to just paint a grim picture of violence per se. So I think that is one of the main differences I've noticed. And I feel that in countries where women's rights have advanced further, the whole public discourse becomes more about the problem, and how the problem is systemic and how it's like, my story is just symbolic of so many. While in countries where the debate has come, not as far, there's more of a tendency to like just isolate my story as this terrible thing that happened to this poor woman. So there's a less of a willingness to see the systemic issue, per se, of men's violence against women.
I personally would guess or would say that Iceland and the Scandinavian countries in Europe are quite advanced these topics. So how is the response there?
Well, we are, for example, my home country of Iceland, we have been on the top of the World Economic Forum's Gender Equality Index for 15 consecutive years.
Oh, yeah.
And the other Nordic countries always like land on the top 5, in that list. So yes, I do think that we can comfortably say that the Nordic region is leading the pack in terms of gender issues. However, it does not mean that we have things figured out. We still have a long ways to go. There's still, widespread violence. In Iceland, 42% of women are subject to either physical or sexual violence at the hands of a man in their lifetime. So, yeah, there's no country on earth where these matters are not existent and not causing problems for society, both in the form of human suffering, but also at huge economic costs. Violence is expensive. It's really expensive.
The society and the government.
Exactly.
All the consequences that are coming then.
Exactly, like the load on the health.
Cheap to be more peaceful or more friendly.
Yes. It's more economic.
If there is economic value, then there is motivation.
Exactly. Yes.
So sorry for interrupting. You have been talking about the fact that it's every time costly, and then you wanted to continue about.
No, I was just saying, like it's a load on the healthcare system and the welfare system, and people who are subject to violence and are traumatized. They're absent from work oftentimes. They go into burnout. They need more, healthcare support. So. Obviously, it impacts the GDP, like the gross national product of a country, to disregard violence. Like it's more expensive to not try and prevent it than to actually do something about it. So
quite a lot of people, the discussion about the gender and about the relations between genders is in my country quite warm, quite hot, sometimes quite emotional. And me personally, I'm 52 years old. I would say that I'm definitely sure that really most of women has some bad experience with any man. On the other hand, as I have been asking my friends, women and men, quite often they told me, well, Peter, on one side, I understand that any kind of violence is bad, but in the other end, every time there is some kind of pushing and some kind of pulling the man between man and woman. So where is the border between these two ways of communication? When my showing of interest crossed the border, which is nice and acceptable, can you say it?
Do you mean if you're like flirting with someone?
Yes, for example.
Okay.
Or if I just only want to tell anybody, you are beautiful, you have beautiful dress. Now it seems that you have beautiful day. Tell me something. And I don't want to attack you. I don't want to push you anyhow. But I only want to change this nice kind of energy. How to do it?
Yeah. Well, I heard someone say, and I unfortunately can't credit the right person because it was years ago, but I heard someone once say, when men are not sure how they can respectfully show an interest in someone, if they were to imagine that they just arrived in a male prison and they were the newest inmate, they would very soon discover what feels like safe and, someone taking a safe interest, like someone showing up and being like, so are you the new inmate? What's your name? Where are you from? Is very different from like, so are you the new inmate? Where are you from?
It will be nice to spend some time together.
Yeah.
Immediately, I will start a little bit afraid. That's right.
Exactly. So I think, that example stuck with me. I thought, maybe that's useful for men who aren't sure. Like, how would I want to be approached in an all-male prison if I was the newest inmate?
But I don't want to have a relation the way that I will start with my imagination of prison. I want to have it more peaceful or more open. Do you have any other example, or this is just the best one? Because for me it's very difficult to start to imagine that every woman that I approach is feeling a little bit like to be in a prison, surrounded by danger. But is it so?
No, I don't think it's so. But I think it's respectful to always assume that the women that you're talking to may have wildly different experiences. So it's always safe to err on the side of caution, as we say. So I think, not knowing what someone has been through, to always just assume that being more careful is best. I think that is the most respectful way to approach anyone, regardless of their gender, to just always assume that more caution is better exercise than less. But I think that, at the end of the day, how you approach someone reflects what you feel of their human worth, I think. Mm-hmm. So, men who have dubious attitudes towards women, I think that's where you risk displaying an attitude that might give that away. And I think we sense that. Mm-hmm. We sense what type of energy people are carrying. And for example, with racism, which is not too different from sexism, it's basically just another form of prejudice. You can have someone who's very racist and has a racist attitude towards a Black person, but they're saying all the right things and they're being polite, but they're saying it in a way that is hostile. Yes. So I think that we can register what a person actually feels about you, what their attitudes and beliefs are. And it's not really dependent on what they say. It's how they're treating you and what kind of emotion and energy is accompanying what they're saying. So it's less about words. It's more about stance, more about I guess this subtext that we are so highly trained to pick up on as human beings, but is hard to describe with words.
Yeah, and each person is just a different whole space of emotions, feeling levels. Yeah. Then sometimes it comes another one. As you have been talking, I started to counting or thinking about all the steps that probably every woman does during the day to prevent herself from some danger.
Yeah.
Well, I will put my car, or how I will go.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. Yeah, I did a poll on my social media. I got hundreds of replies from women all over the world saying, when I asked, what precautions have you taken to avoid getting sexually assaulted? And the list, it was over 100 things that women do. And, just reading through it makes you tired and angry, because it taints every area of life from as you named, where to park your car, to if you even take your car, if you even go out, after dark. Exactly. If you cover your drink when you're in a nightclub or a restaurant, or if you even accept it from someone, if you use the bathroom or not, if you take a taxi home, if you take the taxi all the way home, or if you have the driver stop away from your house so that the driver won't know your address.
But then you will walk alone. So
exactly. And then you'll have to walk alone. And from to what you wear. Some women say, I cut my hair short so no one could grab my ponytail. I only wear one AirPod in my ear, not both, so that no one can sneak up on me. I always have my keys sticking out of my fist. I always have the emergency number punched into my phone. I pretend to be on the phone. It is just a forever list. And when you read it, it seems like you're reading how someone is acting in an active war zone. That is the type of precaution and safety issues that women are always carrying. Some of them have mace in their bags. Some of them sleep with knives under their pillows or in their nightstands. I'm not saying that's common, but that happens. And some women say, I never go out for a night on the town unless I'm wearing a one-piece bathing suit because no one can tear down my underwear. And so I read this and I was furious. I mean, I knew that precautions exist and I've taken them. But to see how to the lengths that women go to avoid being assaulted. And I thought at time, the effort, the energy that is being spent on this, and how it's a theft, it's stealing so much of women's freedom, of women's ability to move around the world as, someone who has a birthright to make independent decisions. It just makes me so enraged and so saddened on behalf of women that they would have to curtail their quality of life this much. And that, that is something that most men hardly give a thought to. And I can state that because I have asked in hundreds of rooms, because I do a lot of public speaking, I've asked in hundreds of rooms, like, who here has taken precautions to not get sexually assaulted? And women's hands fly up in the air, you know, because they do it all the time. It's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
While men just sit there and kind of like scratch their heads, and it's not something they've ever given thought to. And I thought, imagine what women could do with all that time and effort if they didn't have to worry about this stuff as well. Like, how far would we have advanced if we weren't so crippled by fear, if we didn't live in this omnipresent danger that we shouldn't have to?
Maybe 3-4 years ago, I would be a little bit down, but I have 2 daughters, 15 and 11, and of course I'm thinking about where do they go, if it's safe. But during these 2-3 years, I recognize that this is kind of knowledge, kind of skill that my wife, their mother, is giving to them, and I wouldn't notice that. But I slowly recognize, oh, she's thinking about that moment. How come that you start to think like that? Mama told me. And I recognize that it's kind of knowledge that is shared among women from one to another, and it's really kind of skill. But again, we are back in the situation that I, as a man, don't want you women be living like as a prison in a war zone, just to feel safe, to be beautiful and be just self-confident with the face, with dress, with everything, and just thinking about yourself, not so much about us. Are we so dangerous?
Well,
how to accept that?
Well, I think to answer your question, are we so dangerous? I want to think that a majority of men would not attack a woman like out on the streets. But it's less about that. I also read another funny analogy the other day about, a box of chocolates. So you're offered a box of chocolates and it's 20 pieces of chocolate, right? And one of them is shit, but you don't know which one. Like, would you have one?
Yeah.
Would you? But if your answer is no, I don't like that statistic, then, that's what women face. Like, 1 in 20 men might attack us, but we don't know who. So we're going to have to be cautious around all strange men. So it's not to say that all of you are dangerous, but enough of you pose a threat in a statistical way for us to have to be on our guard all the time. And we're also starting to, as a globe, wake up to various stress-related illnesses like burnouts, for example. And a burnout is a result of just a lot of stress on your nervous system. And if you're always on your guard, you always have your nervous system just kind of activated, then it's no wonder that women are burning out to a larger degree than men are.
But in the box of chocolate would be one that can change into great friend for a whole life. Yeah. Your partner with whom the life just flourish and become much intensive, de-stress.
True.
So,
and I think most women are aware of that, which is why women are still marrying men.
Oh, yeah. And some of them are really happy, I would say. Yes. Not all of them.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So, no, I mean, sometimes it's it's quite remarkable that, knowing how women's lives and safety and well-being and health is threatened most by men of all the things. Men's violence against women actually kills and cripples more women worldwide of childbearing age than malaria, cancer, war, and traffic accidents combined, according to statistics from the World Health Organization. So given that, it's amazing that women still want to date men. It's incredible. But I think that day will not arrive where women give up on men, but men have to be worthy and men have to take this seriously, and men have left women to fight for their own safety and rights for too long. And I think it's high time that men step into this debate and this discourse, which is what my perpetrator tried to do. That's why we co-authored our book together and did a TED Talk together, because we think that it's high time that we hear men's voices and men take responsibility for men's violence against women.
Agree. I think that the dialogue is very important. It's already old. It's already on. At least in Euro-American zone, I would say that the dialogue starts, and it's emotional. It's not simple every time. It's quite tough, quite often. But I think that the dialogue is on already.
Well, the dialogue may be on, but we're also, today is the U.S. election day, and we're seeing that a convicted sexual offender who's got 34 felony convictions as well is neck to neck with a highly qualified woman. So the debate may be on, but we're also seeing a very real chance that a convicted rapist will be reinstated into the highest office in the Western world. So
this is good that you mention it, because I think that all the gender dialogue goes not only through man's soul and brain, but through women as well. It changes not only relation to man, but relation women to themselves. Because Donald Trump, he has voters, a lot of women who are his voters, who would say, no, he's strong, he's just a tough man, I want a man like this. So the dialogue really goes through all of us.
Of course,
it's not only a question about the man, you should change. It's about changing all the topic and all the position of the topic in all society.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because none of us are born in a vacuum. All of us are born into an atmosphere and into a set of values and beliefs that we kind of is installed in us from the start. And it's often, if not always, reflecting the status quo and the current beliefs. So you really have to do some work on your own set of beliefs and values to progress from that, right? So it's no wonder that so many women uphold the system that they were born into. They uphold the system of belief that they were taught. And it's second nature. And if no one's actively challenged that, then of course it's going to feel like, the natural way of things. And it's going to feel like this is how it's always been. And the man has always been the leader. And, why change a winning team type of thing? So yeah, I find it entirely natural that people of oppressed minorities will uphold the system of oppression, because that is what they were born into. It's all that they know. Yeah.
I have met in mountains a princess from Qatar. She's very well skilled and very clever lady, very modern lady. And we have been talking about just the position of women in Qatar, which is a topic. And I asked her, well, it must be for you great that you are just a leader for ladies in your country. And she said, no. The biggest problems I have with women, they are attacking me, that I'm breaking their rules, that I am just bad behaving.
Yeah.
So it's not only in men's approach, it's in a woman's approach. I think just the equal level. We all have to move the topic.
Yeah, so everyone is afraid of change. It's in human nature to be afraid of change. And I think women who oppose the progression of women's rights are afraid of, changing the status quo and challenging their own set of beliefs and having to change themselves, which is work. It really is work to reprogram yourself. But also, this reminds me of a play that was written back in the 80s in the U.S. called Extremities, and it's about rape. And the playwright, he did some research, and he talked to lawyers that had, won and lost rape cases, and asked, how do you win a rape case? And the lawyer said, put as many women on the journey as you can to get the offender off the hook. And the playwright was like, I'm sorry, did you say get him off the hook? Like get him acquitted? And the lawyer said, yeah, because women are often harsher on other women because we are so conditioned to not wear the short skirt, not be outside after dark, not flirt with strange men, all the things, so that when another woman breaks this code, we punish her more harshly because we are being so hard on ourselves. So it's that kind of if I'm my harshest own judge, then of course I'm also going to, deflect that and project that onto other women. While men who aren't policing themselves in the way that women are, and therefore aren't policing women in the way that women are, would often sympathize more with victims on the stand and see their wife or their daughter, like, in her, But that was back in the 80s and 90s, and things have changed. But I think in some places in the world, the discussion has come not as far as in some other more westernized parts in terms of women's rights. So I do think that the story about, female jurors being harder on rape victims is reflective of how it still is in some places in the world. Yeah. Right. Maybe Qatar is one. Maybe.
And there are parts of society all around the world in every country which are very strict and still keeping on the old rules and style. Yeah.
But there's also a thing called internalized misogyny. When you internalize the sexism and you start to believe it and project it onto other women. And I think what your friend is experiencing is internalized misogyny from other women.
Yeah. And in this shaky world which we are living in now, it makes the atmosphere that the tough and strong man, just a kind of misogyny, is something that we can keep on, that will control the world to still be the world we can believe. And I don't think so, but it works. Many young men are just voting the politicians who are projecting themselves in that kind of position, that kind of person. The world is changing.
Yeah.
Everything's changing. And that's why it's shaking, because the old rules doesn't work anymore. And we don't have the new rules yet.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong per se with strong men or strong women or any strong individual. Like I think strength is a good quality and leadership is a good quality as well. But I think it's time that we expand what a leader means and what leadership can look like.
What the power means.
And what power means and how we treat power and influence. We live in what they call an attention economy today, where like the more followers you have on social media, for example, like dictates your stance in society, which is a very new phenomena in human history. But I think if we expand on that, then we're seeing like people rise into stardom from their own, platforms. So we're seeing like community leaders from, demographics that didn't have access to power before. So power is changing and the face of power is changing.
You already mentioned that book, which is now published in Czech Republic. Chci se ti podívat do očí. Is it a real name?
It's his real name.
Because Thordis, is it from Thor? That you are just a goddess of storm and...
I'm the thunder goddess.
And stranger is a stranger.
I know. And the irony of that is there's something called stranger danger. And it is like, this need to be cautious towards strangers and like how, women are taught to not trust strangers or talk to strangers and children, etc. When in reality, we know that 70% of sexual offenders who prey on women and children are known to the victim.
Oh, yes.
So stranger danger is exaggerated. Exactly. Yeah, it's exaggerated. Yeah, but it's ironic that that's his name.
It's part of the name of the book. Your names of you both. Yes. It's pretty strong book. It's pretty interesting book. One of the lines which is very interesting for me and which is touching is the part of the story when Tom recognizes what he really did. I think this is a very important part of all the dialogue about gender. To start to recognize what is really happening, what something which is almost unimportant for a man behavior can hurt or can mean something or can be accepted like meaning something. That is very important for us men to recognize this. We haven't been learned for this. Behave like a man, you know how a right man should behave like that. I don't know how the right man should behave. It's always something told around. And just to recognize the consequences and accept my responsibility for these consequences, I think this is a very important part of the dialogue.
I agree. Maybe the most important part of the dialogue, yeah.
And yeah, I think that maybe this is only my projection, that I see the Tom in this book coming from the man who is not happy with what he did, as he started to have his own way of trauma and troubles and problems, that his way to go through the trauma is to accept the back way, the story and responsibility and these moments. Do you think, is it right? Am I correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And after he and I recorded the TED Talk, that has been viewed millions of times. It's hard to even gauge how many millions of times because it's pirated on different platforms. But between 10 and 20 million times, I think. But after we recorded that talk, I visited the redwood forests in California, which is a sacred place. Oh my God. These gigantic trees that, are 2,000-year-old and just massive like buildings, and you just feel like there's so much sacred wisdom there. Like these trees have seen things. They carry our history in a way. Good. And so I was walking around in that forest and I came across a tree with no explanation, had a plaque like bolted onto the tree. And the plaque said, "Without responsibility, there can be no freedom." And I thought that was mind-blowing because that's exactly what is reflective of Tom's journey and all of this. When he was not taking responsibility for what he had done, he wasn't free because he was prisoner of his guilt. He was prisoner of like this bad conscience that had him trying to escape himself through drugs, through partying, through, different self-destructive ways. But as soon as he stopped running and as soon as he took responsibility, he set himself free from that cage of guilt and bad conscience. So, yeah, it spoke true for me, rang true.
And if I will try to talk about the other character of this beast, about you, for me it's very interesting that you, as I understand it, this is my explanation, and you can correct me if I'm not right, you prove me that if anything bad happened to me, even if I feel that it's much bigger, much stronger, it's influenced me so much that I really don't know if I can do anything more, still the only person who can control it is me. Would you agree? Is it so?
That's so moving. I'm so happy that you got that from those pages. Yes, no, absolutely. At the end of the day, we can't control what happens to us in life for the most part because life will throw shit your way and trauma your way. No one walks through life without unexpected traumatic events. It may not be violence. It can be loss of a friend. It could be divorce. It could be, so many other things that we deal with. So we can't control that, but we can control how we react to that. And we can control how we deem ourselves worthy of support and processing of what just happened. And I think this is where we have another gender divide. I think that the current kind of masculine ideal doesn't really support men in processing difficult emotions. So I think in the current masculine ideal, men are supposed to just push it down, shrug it off, be a man. But that's not how we work as human beings. We have to process things. We have to feel our feelings. And if we don't, we risk lashing out. And that's, I think, why we see so much more violent crime being committed by men than by women and other genders, because I think it's less socially acceptable in the current masculine ideal for men to hurt, for men to weep, for men to process, for men to be vulnerable, for men to need help and support. And we also see that reflected in statistics that show that men seek medical help a lot later in the process than, for example, women. So when they arrive at the doctor's office, it's sometimes too late to save them. So they're dying from preventable diseases, which is another tragedy. And also the fact that men take their own lives 3 times as often as women, I think is reflective of the fact that they're not processing their emotions in a healthy way, which is why they give up on life as opposed to carrying on.
A few weeks ago, I have just here sitting Arne Rubinstein. He's from Australia, and he introduced the process or the ritual of being accepted as adult from remote tribes just to Western society. It's very interesting. It's really a very interesting topic. But if I will go back to you, please tell me your journey to recognize the situations that you have it finally in your hands, but you need to make some steps. And one of these steps was to start communicate with Tom, then to meet him and start to talk with him. But you was the active person who started. So can you tell me a few words about this, your mental journey in your soul, or meeting your, because I think it's kind of journey to your identity and to your integrity. So this kind of journey each of us must do somehow. And, thanks to your story. The good thing of the bad thing that happened to you is that it forced you to go this way. And then for us is a gift that we can see how clear it might be if the story is so sharp. So we can recognize it. Am I understandable? Do I say
yes,
it?
You are. Yes, thank you. Thank you again. I think there's so much truth to the words that there's a gift in every crisis.
Which is usually said, but it's sometimes so difficult that it cannot.
And the challenge is to find the gift in the crisis.
And split it up. Even it took 9 years to start to meet it. So
exactly,
it wasn't just, I will find something good. No, it takes time. It takes a journey.
Sure, I'll try to summarize, but the rape happened when I was 16. And in my mind, rape was carried out by like a knife-wielding lunatic that like hid in the back seat of your car. It wasn't your soft-spoken honor student boyfriend that charmed your mom. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it took me a while to piece 2 and 2 together. Even if I had all the, physical and emotional consequences of rape, I still was in a bit of a denial that it had actually happened to me the first time I gave my heart away. I don't think any teenage girl wants to really come to terms with that. So I resisted it for a while. And when I finally came to terms with it, Tom had completed his exchange program and moved back to Australia. So Australia being on the other side of the planet from Iceland, I didn't think I had any, chance of like legal justice or anything formal of a process. So I did what most, I think, survivors do, which is try to like just move on with my life, try to put this behind me. But it was like ticking in the background like a bomb, And to survive the rape, like to just stay sane, I counted seconds, which is why I know to this day that there's 7,200 seconds in 2 hours. But like when I was trying to outrun my past to try and put it behind me, this like ticking, incessant ticking of seconds like happened whenever I stood still, because my past was knocking on my door. My past was like, you need to heal me. You need to address me. You need to acknowledge me, right? But I wasn't ready to. So I tried all the tricks in the book, the self-destructive kind of escapism through workaholism. I just filled my schedule so I wouldn't have to stand still, so I wouldn't feel my past breathing down my neck. Struggled with alcohol, struggled with eating disorders, had, unhealthy relationships. So, something had to give. Something had to give. And one day when I'm not doing so well, I'm having a fight with my then boyfriend, and I stormed out the door and in tears, and I drove to a nearby cafe where I didn't think anyone would recognize me. And I sat down in like a corner of the cafe with a small notebook, and I was just going to doodle in it to like calm my nerves. And then this letter addressed to Tom, my perpetrator, just streamed out of my pen, and I was so surprised because I had not been thinking about him or this event, but apparently it had been brewing in my subconscious, and it kind of bubbled to the surface that day. And what I found quite remarkable was that the letter was just so perfect in the sense that I didn't have to rewrite a word. It just came out just an immaculate conception in a way. So I felt this is a voice I didn't know I had, and it was confrontational. It was confronting him and placing the responsibility with him and kind of like giving back this burden of shame that was never mine.
This is a very important moment. This is your responsibility. I have the pain, I have the problems, but it's your responsibility. I'm responsible for my life, what I will do, but the case is yours.
Yeah.
This is very important, and for many people, unusual step.
It was a case of this ends here. This ends now. Like I've carried this for long enough. I need to take back the energetic investment that I've put into carrying this load. I need to release that energy, take it back, and use it for more constructive things.
This is very important.
Yes.
This is the point. It takes time to get to this point. Again, I cannot recognize, or I cannot order myself. So now I will put it away. It needs to be brewed inside.
Yes.
And in the right time, I must be strong enough to let it go. Because it's another important point.
Exactly.
So, okay, do I really do to let it go?
Exactly.
So I will, because it's jumped to something new. It's changing the rules. Because during the 9 years, you somehow used to live like that. And when you was writing the letter and sending it, this is another point, right? And send.
Yes.
You open brand new chapter.
Yes.
And nobody knows what would happen.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It wasn't a calculated decision. It had to be born from this place within me that I didn't know I had, essentially, like my core. But you're right. There was a whole other step in not only did I write this, now what do I do with this? What the hell do I do with this?
But yes.
So I'm like, do I send this? Do I just stow it away and think of it as a release that needed to happen on paper? Or, and then, I was scared at the thought of sending it to him because it's like giving him power again to hurt me.
Oh, yeah.
Because he could deny this, he could call me a liar, he could, react in a negative way. And then that is going to cause an emotional upheaval for me. And I don't want to give him the power to cause me any emotional upheaval ever again. So, I really questioned whether I should just, let it go. But then a part of me thought, this newfound voice of mine that I didn't know I had is, important enough and coming from a core place in me to the point where I think I need to give it wings. And I think I just need to prepare myself for any outcome, that it could be a negative outcome. But honestly, I thought the most likely outcome would be no reply at all. I thought he's either not going to use his old Hotmail address from 9 years ago, or he's not willing to engage with this part of his past, which would be an entirely human thing to not want to do, I mean, most of us shy away from looking at our, worst actions. So I thought he wouldn't reply, but when he did, I froze. I was like, oh my God, he actually replied. Do I even open this? And it took me 3 days of anguish. Yeah, 3 anxiety-ridden days where I was like, do I open? What have I done?
Last 3 days, because once I open, it will never be the same.
Exactly. It will never be the same. What will the chain reaction be once I open? But then when I did, the last thing that I had expected awaited me. And the only thing I had not prepared for, which was his confession, was the only thing I had not envisioned would happen. But that's what waited for me in my inbox. And he just expressed that not only was he aware of what he had done, and not only did he take wholehearted responsibility for everything I listed in my email, but also how incredibly sorry he felt and how he had, not a day had gone by where he hadn't reflected on it and where it hadn't arisen in his mind. So he asked me, where to from here? Is there anything I can do to make this up to you? And that question just stared at me from the screen. And I thought, wow, this is a curveball I didn't foresee. Is there something I want from his? Is there something he can give me? And the answer was actually yes. There is one thing that most survivors, if not all survivors, want. And it's the answer to the question, why? Why did you do that?
This is the way how Desmond Tutu in South Africa calmed the country. He started to put the bad people and the victims to recognize each other.
Yeah.
And it was the way how he calmed the nation down.
The truth and reconciliation.
How to heal the pain
Exactly.
healing the wounds that the people had. Sorry, I will interrupt you. Then you decide to meet each other.
No, I think your interruption was very on point because we did end up in South Africa.
In Cape Town.
Yes, in Cape Town, but not until years later. First, when he asked if there was anything he could offer me, I decided to pose the $1 million question, why? And that created a correspondence that lasted for 8 years, on and off. We weren't writing all the time. There were extended breaks, in 2 cases over a year long. So, but we kept coming back to this correspondence when something would shed a new light on our past, like we would come across something or we would make a discovery or something would trigger a, particular angle of this memory. So after 8 years, I felt like I had done enough analysis. I'd gotten enough of his, I think, I won't say explanations or justifications or excuses because it wasn't that. It was more me trying to understand the mind frame of an 18-year-old boy from a stable background who had, been raised with ideas of equality and human dignity, and he could still go against his better judgment and create, and commit a crime like this. And I wanted to understand how that happens and why that happens. But after 8 years of writing, I felt like I've come to a place where I don't want to be looking over my shoulder my whole life. I just want to put a full stop to this. I've done enough digging in the past. I want to set myself free. I want to have a future that's not tainted by this. So I tried to just end it. I tried to just say, like, okay, I've done enough of this correspondence. I release both of us from the burdens of the past. Like, have a nice life. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. I wrote the words out on the screen and I kept deleting them because it didn't feel like closure until I realized that, some things cut so deep in us, are so integral and so, such catalysts in our lives that they can't be finished behind a screen or on paper. Like, they have to be voiced. They have to be faced. Yes, person to person. So
to change the energy.
Exactly. So I suggested, how do you feel about us, like, just facing it once and for all, facing each other? And he was terrified. He was terrified. He was like, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard.
I will go and kill you, don't worry.
Yeah, well, after 8 years of correspondence, I had come to learn what a person he had grown into. And obviously, that's 16 years after the actual rape. So, it's half of our lives later because it happened at 16 and I'm now 32 at this point in the story. And so I had learned what type of person he had grown into, and he had grown into a person that I trusted, that I, didn't have to feel unsafe around, who wouldn't reoffend, which is, of course, the only reason why I was even communicating with him, because I wouldn't be communicating with someone who is actively perpetrating. I would, of course, try to stop that if I was in a position to. But yeah, no, I was also, I think, understandably scared. I think both of us were scared of, like, the emotional weight of meeting up. But I think we also both understood the urgency of putting a full stop to this chapter and releasing ourselves from the past once and for all, which was the aim of meeting up.
The rest we
is
kept in the wind.
Which we both wrote. I think it's important to state that Tom is not receiving any profits from the book.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's good to state that because I understand how that would feel a bit problematic for people that he would profit from having committed a sexual assault. So that's not the case.
So all the money comes to you.
Everything goes to me. Well, actually, most of it always goes to the publishers.
How is it?
How is the...
because I have mentioned somewhere the information that the part of money that should belong to Tom are coming to support some...
women's shelters. Yes. That was the case, like, throughout our publishing journey, that he donated his profit to the Reykjavik Women's Shelter, which is the only women's shelter in Iceland.
Okay. It's just important to mention it.
Yeah.
I appreciate very much that you say the story, because I think that for many people, each of us has kind of trauma. The steps and the twist points are very similar, I would say. It's still in me. I cannot play the game. It's already over. I don't care. No. It's inside me. It's in my soul. If it hurts, then it is there. So I have a load.
There's a good saying. It goes, if you can feel it, you can heal it.
Okay, very good. And let's figure it together the way like this. It takes time.
Yeah.
I cannot do it just only by decision. My decision would be, well, I will face it. But I cannot expect that it will be like that. It really takes time. It may take several years.
Yeah.
And still, the road I should keep is the road to listen myself. Well, I don't know what will happen. I don't feel well. Still, it pains. Still, it's difficult. But how do I feel? What's happening to me? Why I behave like that? Is this the way? Be in dialogue with yourself.
Yeah, I think for me, I can't speak for all of humanity, but I think for me, for sure, one of the key components to a healthy life with a good life quality is to be in good touch with your emotions, for sure. And as I just said, if you can feel it, you can heal it, which means that if you are harboring hurt, or if you're like walking around with baggage, emotional baggage, which all of us, let's face it, all of us have, then, working to release as much of that as possible is optimal to our health and well-being. If we imagine life as a journey that we're taking by foot, we're walking through this valley of the shadow of death. No, but if we're walking along this path, then we don't want to be dragging a lot of luggage with us, right?
During years, it will be pretty heavy.
It will be pretty heavy if we're not actively working on releasing stuff and leaving it by the side of the road if it's no longer serving us, So don't be afraid to release and leave things that may have served you at one point, but is no longer serving you and is not going to help you on your journey forward. And I think the only way to do that is to be in touch with your emotions and to be aware of where I am carrying things that are just weighing me down.
And I think last we can talk about it for years, with the points, there's part of psychological science on trauma and the process. But I think what is important at the end, to understand that I cannot lose it for all the time. Forever, it will be part of my life, of that my journey. But I can create relation that can help me to integrate it somehow. So I will not carry it. I will leave it, but I will continue my life having it in my path, having it in. It's still somehow in me, but now I'm ready to integrate it,
Exactly.
Make it part of myself, and find a relation, me and my past.
Exactly. Well, I think what you're describing is what happens after you actively process something. And when you process it, you're no longer resisting it, because the resisting it is what takes so much energy, what is so heavy, is the process of resisting and trying to outrun and deny and shove down something. But as soon as you take it up and you're like, okay, I'm sitting down on this road here, I'm going to unpack this thing, and I'm going to process this thing. And often the heaviest baggage is guilt, right? So we take out our guilt and our shame. Those are the heaviest two components to drag through life. So we're looking at our shame, we're looking at our guilt, and if we process it effectively, then at the end of that is forgiveness. I forgive myself for having made this mistake, or I forgive myself for having messed up. And that's when we can integrate it. Then it's no longer this searing, hot, burning rod of iron in our fists, but now it's something that I can it's a mosaic in my heart that is reflective of something I learned. So it turns from being harmful into being growth. And there's a beautiful concept called post-traumatic growth. Because we hear so much about her dark sister, post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
but we don't hear a lot about post-traumatic growth. But most of us have seen it in action, and we've seen how, someone has a near-death experience, like they have a car accident or they have cancer and they beat it. And afterwards, they have like a new appreciation for life. They may have like a spiritual awakening, or like colors are brighter and like their relationships deepen. And that is post-traumatic growth. And psychologists and psychiatry, like as a field, is just now beginning to research it.
Yeah.
Like why it happens, what triggers it, and what type of people have post-traumatic growth. And one of my favorite facts about that is that it's actually not an area where it's good to be resilient, because we keep saying that it's so good to be resilient in life, to have like a thick skin, like that's good. Yeah. But actually, it's the people who are not resilient, who don't have thick skin, that experience the most post-traumatic growth, because the pain goes deeper for them. And that's why the reward is also bigger in the form of growth. So it's it makes sense that it has those double-sided effects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you like men?
Do I like
men?
No. Do I like men?
Yes.
I like men.
That's good.
They can be decent. I don't like all men for sure.
Oh yeah.
No. Not a fan of everyone.
Yes.
But no, I have quite a few men in my life that I truly cherish.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. You have son?
I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. And then I have 2 stepdaughters as well. Yeah. I'm rich.
Thank you very much for all the dialogue we might have.
My pleasure. It was a truly pleasurable talk.
Yeah. I appreciate it very much. 2 questions. Do you have a message for men and a message for women? What would you say? Now there is, maybe you can say to Lance or to me as you want, to women. Now, what would you say to women? You have a message. They must be asking you, what is your mission? So what would you say to women?
I think if I can start with men.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. Deferred.
I think that men need to understand that they deserve better than the current masculine ideals that we have in society. The current masculine ideals that we have in society are very narrow. And so it's kind of like, it sets men and boys up for failure is what it does. So, if the path that you have to walk is so narrow that you have to constantly be proving your masculinity to show that you're man enough, I think that is a harmful way to go through life. To not be a fully 3-dimensional human being that gets to have all the emotions, that gets to be vulnerable, that gets to make mistakes, that gets to cry, that gets to process. And so if that is the kind of like stereotype that you inherited that you have to fit into, then I want to say you deserve so much better than that. And there's a life out there worthy of living that is bigger than that, that allows you to be freer than that. But it requires that you shape this new masculinity, that you create it, that we co-create it. And not just men, people of all genders need to join in and decide that this old masculinity where men have to be towers of power and they have to wield and conquer, which is so destructive for all of us, to leave that behind and to take on a more multifaceted, 3-dimensional masculinity. But we all have to support it. We can't make fun of men who are trying to break out of the box. We can't emasculate them, and ridicule them as they are trying to expand their masculinity, as they are experimenting with what it means to be a man. We all have to be a part of that experiment and celebrate that we are trying on different things, because the current state shows us it's not serving us. There's too much violence. There's too much suffering. Men are dying from preventable disease and suicide that they don't have to be, So I think for all of us to feel better, that is what needs to happen. And women, my message to women would be, we also have to support that and hold space for that, hold space for men to heal as well as us. We all need to heal from this destructive set of ideas that we've been born into. And we have to be unafraid to kind of reprogram ourselves to abandon old ideas of what it means to be a woman or a man or a person of a particular gender, and be unafraid to craft that in a way that serves us better as people. You know. My pleasure. Do you say děkuji?
Oh, yeah. Very good. Very good.
That's all. Thank you for listening. See you next time.